Hello, dear listener. Welcome back to Whispering Hearts. Take a slow, deep breath with me now, in through your nose, filling your lungs gently, and out through your mouth, letting all tension melt away. Tonight, I have an extra long, tender, whispering story just for you about a young dreamer named Lily who embarked on her very first solo journey to the enchanting city of Paris. There were delightful little language mix-ups that brought unexpected laughter, sweet surprises around every corner, moments of wandering blissfully lost in winding streets, tastes of buttery pastries that warmed the soul, sights of sparkling lights and ancient stones that stole the breath, and in the end a deep well of peace, joyful memories, and the softest sweet dreams imaginable. This tale is woven in very simple, gentle English, ideal for drifting into relaxation or quietly practicing your ear for words. If you're all settled now, perhaps tucked under a blanket with pillows fluffed just right, close your eyes softly if it feels good, let your shoulders drop heavy like stones in a calm river, your arms and legs grow warm and loose, and surrender to my hushed whispering voice as it carries you softly, ever so softly, into a serene, enveloping night where worries fade like morning mist. Sweet dreams are already waiting patiently for you there, just breathe and let go completely. My name is Lily. I am 25 years old, and I live in a cozy little village nestled in the rolling green hills of Scotland, where the winds carry ancient stories through the heather and the evenings wrap around you like a favorite woolen shawl. From as far back as I can remember, I have dreamed of traveling all by myself one day, of wandering through romantic, storybook cities where every street corner holds a secret, of savoring delicate sweets that dance on the tongue, of discovering hidden nooks where artists sip coffee and dreamers sketch the sky, and most of all, of finding quiet pieces of my own wandering heart scattered like wild flowers along the way. But tucked deep inside that dream was a tiny flutter of fear, because setting off alone to a vast, unfamiliar place means placing all your trust in your own 2 feet, your own curious eyes, and your own sometimes tangled words. My English is steady enough for everyday chats back home, polished smooth from school lessons and village gossip, but when nerves tangle my tongue or excitement quickens my breath, I find myself tripping over simple sounds or swapping letters like mischievous sprites. Those little pronunciation slips happen to the best of us learners, and truly, that's more than all right because they are the gentle teachers that coax out laughter, forge unexpected bonds, and remind us that the heart speaks louder than perfect syllables ever could. This whole whimsical tale unfolds on a misty, blooming morning in April, when the first brave flowers were unfurling their petals to greet the sun, and the air hummed with the promise of spring's soft magic. I stirred awake far earlier than the roosters, my eyelids heavy yet sparkling with anticipation, for my train bound for Paris was set to depart at the very first blush of dawn. Sleep had eluded me most of the night before, chased away by a whirlwind of bubbling excitement and the occasional whisper of what-ifs. So I rose quietly in the dim light, my bare feet padding across the cool wooden floor of my attic room. I checked my modest little suitcase not once, not twice, but a full 3 times over, folding and refolding until everything nestled just so, my crisp train ticket tucked in a pocket like a golden key, a soft woolen scarf knitted by my gran for chilly evenings, my cherished leather-bound sketchbook with pencils sharpened to fine points for capturing fleeting beauties, a handful of pounds folded neatly for any sudden whims, and even a few fragrant herbal tea bags to brew comfort in unknown teapots. At long last, with the final pat to the sturdy latch, everything was packed tight and true, and a bright spark of pure adventure ignited in my chest, warming me against the morning chill as I slipped out the door with a quiet wave to the sleeping village. At the bustling train station, bathed in the golden haze of early light filtering through arched windows, everything unfolded with surprising smoothness, like a well-rehearsed dance. I handed over my ticket to the kindly conductor, who stamped it with a flourish and a nod, then boarded the sleek silver train, weaving through the narrow aisle until I found my assigned seat right by the wide window, where the world outside promised to unfold like a living tapestry. The train hummed to life with a gentle sigh, pulling away from the platform as I settled in, propping my head against the cool glass and watching the emerald fields of Scotland roll by in waves of green, dotted with grazing sheep that looked like fluffy clouds escaped from the sky. The journey stretched over several languid hours, but oh, it was a balm for the soul, peaceful as a lullaby. I sipped steaming tea from my thermos, the herbal notes curling like smoke in the air, read passages from a worn novel of French tales, napped lightly with my cheek pressed to the window, and let my mind drift into daydreams of buttery croissants crumbling under eager fingers, of the Eiffel Tower piercing the twilight like a silver needle, and of cobblestone paths that whispered invitations to lost wanderers. When the train finally glided into the Grand Paris station, alive with the symphony of announcements in melodic French and the scent of fresh baguettes wafting from nearby stalls, the air outside carried a heady mix of blooming chestnuts and the faint, clean kiss of recent rain on warm stone. My heart skipped a joyful beat, as if it recognized home in this foreign pulse. With suitcase in tow, I navigated the throng of travelers and emerged into the metro's underground web, my first true taste of Parisian rhythm. The colorful map on the wall looked like a puzzle of twisting vines, but I studied it with furrowed brow and steady finger, tracing the line to my stop in the Latin Quarter, that legendary labyrinth of book-lined streets, bohemian cafes, and the eternal hum of scholars and scribes. Purchasing my ticket from the sleek machine proved a small comedy. I jabbed the wrong glowing button in my haste and ended up with a child's fare, the machine beeping its polite protest. A uniformed attendant nearby caught my eye, chuckled softly at my flustered wave, and with a few expert taps, exchanged it for the proper adult pass, murmuring "pas de problème, mademoiselle, no trouble at all," in accented English that wrapped around me like a hug. I beamed my thanks, not grasping every word but feeling the warmth nonetheless, and descended the escalator into the rumbling heart of the metro. The ride jostled along underground rivers of light and shadow, stations flashing by with names like Poetry Odeon. Saint Michel announced in voices that liltingly urged "mind the gap" in two tongues. Fellow passengers buried noses in newspapers or novels, sipped espresso from tiny cups, and the cars filled with that uniquely Parisian blend of purpose and poetry. I alighted at my stop with a rush of exhaled breath, climbing stairs into the embrace of a sun-dappled street where bicycles leaned against iron railings and accordion echoes drifted from afar. The buildings rose tall and graceful around me, their facades a creamy beige adorned with wrought iron balconies overflowing with geraniums in riotous red. My little hotel waited just a block away, a charming nook called Hotel des Rêves with a faded blue awning and windows framed in lace. The door chimed like a bell as I pushed inside, and there stood Madame Claire, the owner, a petite woman with silver-streaked hair pinned in a loose chignon and eyes that twinkled like sane reflections. She enveloped me in a quick, flowery hug she had been baking by the scent and chattered in rapid French before switching to charmingly broken English to show me to my room upstairs. It was a gem of a space, tiny as a bird's nest but brimming with sweetness, a canopied bed piled high with downy pillows and a quilt stitched in faded florals, a wicker chair by a round window overlooking a sunlit courtyard where ivy climbed the walls and a fountain trickled like liquid silver, a marble-topped table for tea, and even fresh violets in a porcelain vase. I unpacked languidly, draping my scarf over the chair like a flag of arrival, arranging my sketchbook with pencils fanned out, and sinking onto the bed for a moment to simply breathe in the city's embrace through the open pane. I was truly here, all by my lonesome in Paris, yet the solitude felt like a gentle companion, not a shadow. After that brief, restorative pause, with the afternoon sun slanting golden through the curtains, I could no longer resist the call of the streets and slipped into my most faithful walking shoes, the ones with cushioned soles for endless miles, tucked my sketchbook under my arm like a talisman, and ventured forth into the Latin Quarter's lively tapestry. The air buzzed with a soft, vibrant energy, clusters of students debating philosophy over steaming mugs at zinc counters, street vendors flipping golden crepes with expert flicks, the distant gleam of the Seine winking through gaps in the buildings like a sly invitation. I meandered without map or agenda, surrendering to the whims of my feet, letting them carry me past shuttered windows painted sage green, under archways etched with centuries of lovers' initials, and around fountains where children tossed coins with wishes on their lips. Soon, the famed Shakespeare and Company bookstore lured me in with its crooked sign and promise of worlds within worlds. I pushed open the door to a hush broken only by page turns and the occasional purr of resident cats lounging on velvet cushions amid towering shelves that groaned under the weight of tales in every tongue. The air was thick with the comforting musk of aged paper, ink, and forgotten dust, and I wandered aisles lined with poetry and prose, my fingers trailing spines like old friends. I selected a slim volume of verses by a French poet whose words evoked moonlight on water, paid with a shy merci, and curled into a worn armchair to read aloud in whispers, the lines about fleeting loves and eternal stars wrapping around me like silk. As the sun began its slow descent, gilding the rooftops in amber, I emerged to find a tiny cafe with wrought iron tables spilling onto the pavement, patrons nursing glasses of wine the color of rubies. Heartened by the scene, I claimed a chair in the shade of a striped awning and, with menu in hand, ordered un café au lait and a pain au chocolate, pointing eagerly at the picture but oh, in my haste, I pronounced pain with the sharp English bite of sorrow, not the soft French nod to bread. The waiter, a lanky youth with a mop of curls and an impish grin, paused mid-note, his eyebrow arching like a question mark, then burst into a chuckle that rippled through his shoulders. Pain? Ma pauvre, no hurt here in my cafe, I promise. You mean pain au chocolate, the sweet one, yes. My cheeks bloomed rose as hot as the geraniums nearby. Oui, yes. Bread, not the sad kind of pain, s'il vous plaît. He winked conspiratorially, vanishing into the kitchen only to reappear with the treasure, a crescent of flaky golden pastry, puffed high and dusted with sugar, its core oozing dark chocolate that gleamed like hidden jewels. I bit in tentatively at first, then with growing delight as the buttery layers shattered crisply and the molten filling coated my tongue in velvet warmth, and soon I was laughing too, the mishap dissolving into just another thread in Paris's whimsical weave. It wasn't a moment of shame but of pure charm, much like the city itself, which seemed to delight in turning stumbles into stories. As twilight deepened, draping the sky in veils of lavender and rose, I set off again toward the Seine's shimmering embrace, the river's surface catching the last sunbeams like scattered diamonds. Couples ambled arm in arm, their shadows long and intertwined, while bateaux mouches glided past with lanterns aglow, their decks alive with murmurs and the clink of glasses. I paused on the Pont des Arts, that bridge of love's locked eternal, and pulled out my sketchbook to capture a lone lamp post's reflection dancing on the water, my pencil strokes light as breaths, the world blurring into soft focus around me. But as night wove its starry cloak fully overhead, the streets began to twist like a lover's riddle, and to my quiet dismay, I realized I had spun myself into a loop, the familiar spire of my hotel lost amid the labyrinth. My phone's map app flickered stubbornly, the signal playing hide and seek, and a tiny prickle of unease danced up my spine. Adrift in Paris after dark, my cozy room a distant beacon, yet here I stood with only the moon for guide. I drew a steadying breath, the cool air laced with jasmine from a nearby window box, recalled the rough sketch Madame Claire had drawn on a napkin that morning, and pivoted at the glow of a flower shop's marquee, its blooms spilling out like colorful secrets. 10 minutes of purposeful wandering later past patisseries exhaling vanilla sighs, galleries with canvases agleam in electric light, and an accordionist coaxing melancholy waltzes from his bellows. The steeple of Saint Sulpice rose before me like a faithful sentinel. Relief flooded through me warm as mulled wine, and I quickened my step homeward, the adventure etching itself deeper into my grateful bones. Back within the Hotel des Rêves' welcoming walls, I lit a beeswax candle that flickered shadows like fireflies on the plaster, brewed a pot of chamomile from my tea bags to chase away the evening's chill, and opened my journal to the fresh page, penning in looping script, Day 1 in luminous Paris, a bungled word at tea, a merry chase through twilight alleys, but oh, the way back felt like victory. This city teases, then treasures. With the journal closed and candle snuffed, I slipped between the crisp sheets, the distant hum of the city weaving lullabies through the cracked window, and surrendered to sleep with a curve of smile lingering on my lips. Long pause, 30 seconds of soft, pattering rain or whispering wind to let the calm settle deeper. The following morning unfurled like a gift, sunlight pirouetting through the lace curtains in golden motes that danced across the quilted bed. I stretched languidly, every muscle humming with renewal, truly rested after the whirl of arrival, and rose to the aroma of buttery croissants wafting up from the breakfast nook below. Madame Claire had laid out a spread fit for a poet, flaky pastries still warm from the oven, pots of apricot jam glistening like sunrise, fresh berries tumbling in bowls, and pitchers of frothy café crème. I savored each bite at a tiny table by the courtyard window, the fountains trickle a serene underscore to my plans, which I sketched loosely on a napkin, a pilgrimage to the graceful Notre Dame, a lazy picnic along the Seine's emerald banks, perhaps a detour into the whispering halls of a museum if the mood beckoned. Venturing out into the crisp spring air, Paris preened under a canopy of azure sky, the streets alive with the ballet of daily life. I crossed the Pont Saint-Michel to the Isle de la Cité, where Notre Dame's soaring silhouette commanded the horizon, her stone facade scarred yet stoic from the flames that had tested her spirit, her gargoyles perched like wise, weathered guardians surveying the ages. I lingered on a weathered bench amid the pigeons, sketchbook balanced on knee, rendering the intricate lace of her rose window in soft graphite strokes, the lines flowing as if the cathedral itself guided my hand, while tourists murmured in a dozen dialects and the river lapped patiently below. From there, my path led to a bustling market stall cluster, where I bartered gently with smiles more than words for wedges of creamy camembert veined with blue, a crusty baguette still sighing steam, and clusters of purple grapes plump as jewels, gathering these simple joys into a cloth bundle for my riverside feast. By the Seine's willow-fringed edge, I unfurled my makeshift picnic on a patch of velvety grass, arranging cheeses on apple slices, tearing bread with deliberate fingers, and popping grapes one by one, their juice bursting tart and sweet as I gazed at ducks gliding like feathered skiffs and distant artists daubing easels with bold, liquid colors. A playful breeze tugged at my hair, carrying snatches of laughter from picnickers nearby, and in that unhurried interlude, time seemed to pause, gifting me a bubble of pure, unadorned peace. The afternoon beckoned onward to the vast, echoing Louvre, a palace of plunder where treasures from forgotten empires slumbered under vaulted ceilings. Overwhelmed by the splendor, marble Venuses gazing eternal, armored knights frozen in charge, I chose to linger before just one masterpiece, the Mona Lisa's enigmatic smile curving faint behind her glass shield, her eyes seeming to follow with quiet knowing as I pondered the riddles she held close. Yet the press of crowds soon sent me fleeing to quieter byways, where I stumbled upon a secret garden tucked behind the iron gates of a forgotten church, its paths meandering through wild roses in reckless bloom and lavender beds humming with bees. I claimed a moss-draped stone bench, closed my eyes to the sun's dappled kiss, and let a profound stillness seep into my bones, the garden's green heart beating in time with my own. Another charming slip befell me at a corner boulangerie, where hunger drew me for an afternoon treat. I requested fromage fraise but mangled it to sound like from age fresh, leaving the ruddy-cheeked baker blinking in bemused delight before he mimed a wheel of soft cheese with theatrical flair. We dissolved into shared giggles across the counter, his belly shaking like kindly thunder, and he pressed an extra round of creamy brie into my hands with a bow, declaring in halting English, "For the amusing Scottish lass who brings smiles to my oven." I curtsied in mock grandeur, cheeks aching from the joy, and continued on, nibbling the gift as I roamed, the mishap transforming into a flavor all its own, rich as the cheese itself. As dusk painted the horizon in strokes of peach and indigo, I found myself on the Pont Neuf, the oldest bridge's arches cradling the Seine like a lover's arms, and from there traced the glowing silhouette of the Eiffel Tower piercing the velvet sky afar. I held off ascending her iron lattice for now, hoarding that thrill like a secret chocolate, and instead melted into the rhythm of a street accordionist whose melancholy waltz pulled at heartstrings, dropping a few euros into his case and swaying there on the cobbles, a solitary figure in the gathering night. Twilight deepened to star-strewn ebony, cafes spilling pools of amber light onto the pavements where Parisians lingered over tarts tatin and glasses of Bordeaux deep as garnets. I chose a bistro with checkered cloths and candle stubs for my evening repast, spooning velvety onion soup that warmed from within like a hug from an old friend, its caramelized depths laced with thyme and Gruyere strings that stretched like lazy spider silk. Sated and serene, I wove homeward through the cooling lanes, humming fragments of the accordion's tune under my breath, the city's nocturnal pulse a soothing counterpoint to my steps. In the sanctuary of my room, with the Eiffel's distant sparkle winking through the pane, I filled another journal page in the candle's glow. Day 2, sketches of stone saints, picnics by whispering waters, a hidden garden's embrace. Even stumbles taste of butter and bloom here. The words trailed off as sleep beckoned, and I yielded to its arms, dreams blooming like the courtyard's ivy under moonlight. Long pause, 40 seconds of gentle breathing or distant birdsong to cradle the listener deeper. Day 3 arrived draped in a veil of silver rain, the drops tapping the window like shy fingers seeking entry, and I borrowed a beribboned umbrella from Madame Claire's eclectic collection, its canopy a faded paisley that smelled of lavender sachets. Undeterred by the drizzle, I set my sights on Montmartre, the storied hilltop enclave of poets and painters, and rode the creaking funicular upward past veils of mist to the crown where Sacré-Cœur's white dome gleamed like a pearl against the grey. At the summit, Paris unfurled below in a watercolor haze, rooftops blurring into zinc and slate under the rain's gentle veil, romantic even in melancholy. I sheltered under the basilica's portico. Sketchbook propped on knee, capturing the dome's fluid curves and the gargoyles' rain-slicked stairs in strokes that mimicked the downpour's rhythm, the patter a metronome to my quiet focus. Lunch called from a humble stand at the hill's base, where I braved the wet for a galette de Sarrasin folded around smoky ham, gooey cheese, and a fried egg, devouring it under a dripping awning while steam rose in fragrant curls, the flavors earthy and comforting against the chill. Nearby, a cluster of easels caught my eye, artists daubing the scene despite the weather, and one bearded fellow with paint-flecked beret beckoned me closer, offering to immortalize my rain-kissed face on canvas gratis, he insisted, 4. Those eyes that hold Highland stories in their depths. We conversed in a patchwork of tongues, his English slow and spiced with Gallic flair, and he gifted me the lesson of Merci beaucoup pronounced with a trill that made it sing. But as I descended the slick funicular and navigated the metro's labyrinth anew, a classic wanderer's folly struck. I overshot my stop by 2, emerging into a quartier of shuttered ateliers and vine-choked walls utterly unknown, the rain now a steady curtain veiling landmarks. My pulse quickened like a deer's in the heather, but I steadied it with a mantra: Paris holds you. Just listen, and approached a gaggle of umbrellaed students huddled at a tabac, my query tumbling out. Ouestle sane, s'il vous plaît. They exchanged glances, then rallied with maps on phones and gestures grand as opera, escorting me halfway through the downpour with tales of their own misadventures, one quipping in flawless English, Paris adores the lost ones, she gifts them her hidden sonnets in return. Their kindness lit the gloom, and soon I traced familiar spires, arriving damp but luminous at my door, the rain a baptism into deeper trust. The afternoon's deluge eased to mist, drawing me into a tea room aglow with brass lamps and velvet banquettes, where I sought the vert for green tea's calm but twisted it to the vert, evoking verticality more than verdure. The proprietress, a dame with cat-eye glasses and a wry smile, tilted her head, green tea, or perhaps a ladder to the stars. Our laughter mingled with the clink of porcelain as she steeped the leaves strong and added a lemon shortbread gratis, her eyes twinkling with shared folly. As evening parted the clouds to reveal a tapestry of stars, I summoned courage for the Eiffel Tower at last, joining the queue under her iron lace work, the ascent in a glass lift revealing Paris in panoramic splendor, the Seine a silver ribbon, the Arc de Triomphe a distant arch, rooftops a sea of slate waves. At the second level, wind tousled my hair as I leaned on the railing, the city twinkling like a billion fireflies below, and in that lofty perch, all small frets evaporated, leaving only awe vast as the night. Dinner awaited in a nook off the Champs-Élysées, where I braved escargot for the first time, the snails tender in garlicky herb butter, surprisingly silken and sublime, paired with a crisp Sancerre that sang on the palate. Homeward bound under a canopy of constellations, I scrawled in my journal by lamplight, Day 3, misty heights, student saviors, towers triumphant gaze. Even rains rinse us to revelation. The patter lulled me under quilts, sleep a river carrying me to realms of rainbows and runes. Long pause, 30 seconds of soft piano notes or rustling leaves to nurture the tranquility. The tapestry of days 4 and 5 wove themselves into a seamless dreamscape of discovery, each hour a brush stroke on the canvas of my Parisian sojourn. Mornings dawned with strolls through the Marais' medieval maze, where half-timbered houses leaned conspiratorially and falafel stands perfumed the air with cumin and tahini. I sketched door-knockers wrought like mythical beasts, their brass faces frozen in eternal surprise. Afternoons floated on bateaux mooches along the Seine, the boat's narrator spinning yarns of Haussmann's grand redesigns and Hemingway's haunts, the water's lap a hypnotic undercurrent as landmarks, the Louvre's pyramid glinting like a diamond in emerald setting, the Orsay's clock faces telling time in Art Deco elegance slipped past in stately procession. Evenings melted into market meanders at Bastille, where I haggled half-heartedly for bars of lavender soap veined with Provence purple and jars of honey golden as sunlight, the vendor's calls a rhythmic chant that blended with buskers' fiddles. One such twilight folly unfolded at a épicerie fine, where thirst led me to request Ven Rose but I clipped it to Win Rose, conjuring floral victories over libations. The shopkeep, a mustachioed sage with a twinkle, feigned a fencing pose, red wine or a bouquet for battle. Before uncorking a bottle of pale, strawberry-scented elixir we shared in tiny tasting glasses, toasting to tongues that tango with trouble. Another gem tumbled forth at a linen shop, seeking naperon for doily but mangling to napper on, as if urging slumber upon fabric. The seamstress tittered behind her thimble, draping samples like capes and murmuring, "Sleepy cloths for dreamy heads, non." Laughter lingered long after, a spice in every encounter. My sketchbook swelled daily, folios fat with vignettes, the curve of a bistro chair's ironwork, a tabby cat's arched back against sunset stone, the fleeting smile of a fleurist arranging peonies in pastel profusion. Bonds blossomed unbidden with Henri, the grizzled bookseller who traded dog-eared Victor Hugo for tales of Highland mist, with Elise, the violinist whose bow coaxed tears from twilight strings, joining me for onion tart under plane trees. Dusks dissolved in pocket parks, where I reclined on benches to watch amours entwine fingers and elders toss baguette crusts to sparrows, the air thick with chestnut blossoms and the faint, far chime of the conciergeries bells. My journal burgeoned, ink flowing freer, day 4, merry whispers, river reveries, soap-scented sunsets. Follies flower into friendships. Day 5, clockwork canvases, honeyed haggles, strings that sting the soul sweet. Paris peels us like pears, revealing the soft core. On the 6th dawn, packing stirred a poignant ache, the room's violets wilted slightly as if sensing farewell, and I embraced Madame Claire fiercely, her cheeks damp with mutual promise of "à bientôt, see you soon." At the station, the heavens held their breath, then parted with a sunbeam as the train whistled south, and in its swaying cradle, I reflected on the mosaic, slips of tongue that sparked symphonies of mirth, detours that unveiled delights undreamed, a city that cradled the solo soul like a cherished verse. Paris had schooled me in the grace of gaffes, the loveliness of labyrinths, the alchemy of alone into a light. Now, cherished listener, as this extended reverie draws its silken curtain, tuck its tendrils close. Your inhalations ease to whispers, your form sinks into featherweight repose, your thoughts unfurl like petals in moonlight's bath. Those trifling tumbles? Mere stepping stones to stellar shores. Good night, my wandering one. Sweet dreams brimming with boulevards and blossoms, éclairs and éclats.